These are my Koco figures from Sonic Frontiers. I made these quite a while ago, and I've just been sitting on the footage waiting for a week where I didn't have any other videos available. And the reason that is because I have tons of other projects going on right now. So before we get started, check out what's coming up on the channel. Subscribe so you don't miss out on any of that. I absolutely adore the Koco. All the hats that they can wear and the different things they do, and their apparent connection to one of my favorite characters, Chaos. I especially love the Elder Koco, the way he has moss growing all over him. It's just fun to look for these guys out in the world. I used this image for reference of all the Koco to make sure I got the sizes right. Check it out. First step was 3D modeling. The bodies were pretty easy. They were just kind of spheres with extruded parts to them. And then I added these little details that they come with. This little question mark shape on the top of this one. The little eyes and mouth on what I think is a beta one. I don't think this guy ever shows up in the game, so it was fun to make this extra version. I'm doing a lot of booleaning of shapes out of it so I can actually have these design elements inside of the model instead of just painting them on. For instance, here I'm making that little rectangular cheek part. For the warriors and the soldiers, I built out cylinders that would kind of be angled certain ways and then combine them together. The reference really helped with this. Then I built out these lines projected onto the 3D geometry of the circles and then cut out from there to get these surprisingly complex shapes out of it. I really like how deep this goes and how solid it feels, like a metal helmet on top of him. After I did the hard surface stuff, I went in and sculpted more hard surface, but organic hard surfaces. This is kind of a stone-like material, except for when I bend it like this. I just thought that was funny. What I did was I hammered down the surfaces to kind of have hard rock shapes and then went in with this noise brush to kind of give it some texture. It was a really tough balance to try to get just the right amount of texture that would show up in the 3D print, but I think the depth that I did it worked out pretty well. I worked a lot to get the mouth right on the Elder Koco. He looks very silly without all his moss on him. One of my favorite Koco is the Apprentice with his little goggles. I was very excited to pair this guy with my Tails figure. This was back when I first got my Galaxy 1 printer and was switching from my Saturn. It has a huge build plate and I'm still getting used to the proper way to work with it. You can see one of the earliest prints came out pretty well. I was able to print a lot of things on this plate. Nice and clean. The first piece of good news today, it's almost 4 o'clock. It's been nothing but bad news. I hate my P1S. Worst advertisement of a printer ever, saying that it works out of the box. What they don't tell you is it works once out of the box, then your extruder gets clogged, then your spring gets clogged, and then somehow the AMS gets clogged too. Don't buy a P1S. I'm mad. Well, I figured out why this failed. I went in to go start wiping it off. Look at that. I didn't tighten the bolts all the way. I checked them too before this print, and I just pulled a little bit, but yeah, you can obviously see that I don't think they came loose on their own. I think they were already just too loose, but tight enough that I didn't think it was bad. So that explains why this failed, luckily. Because I didn't tighten it enough, look how everything kind of shifted. Not just over time, but like multiple different directions. See how all these supports are moving like that? So this one was my fault. That other one was Bamboo Lab's fault. I really have to stress that I take a lot more safety precautions now when I work with resin. This particular printer is really hard to clean out because it has such a huge vat, but nowadays I use a giant syringe to take it all out first, and I don't have to do this ridiculous amount of pouring. You can see all the failed pieces are still in there that they need to be peeled off and cleaned up completely before you start a new print. There we go, nice and clean, and everything's secure. Now this printer's supposed to do really big objects, but it never really does great on things even of this size. The Elder Koco is about as big as I can go. Nowadays, if I were to sell this, I would print it on my FDM printer, and let me know if you'd like me to put more of these in stock. These are a lot lighter and less fragile. I left my chair for a minute to go film the Koco. We have a cat sitting in my chair while I'm trying to work on other projects. I started with this Army Painter gray primer. And then Bailey helped me with the first layer of paint. Got a special guest painter helping me. My wife. And also my cat. One of the big struggles on this project was finding the right color for the Koco, and this was not it. This ended up too dark. I mean, it looks this way in certain scenes, but it's often because of the lighting. So I tried to wash to see if it would get into the details and give me a more realistic look, but there's so much roughness on these models that the wash didn't work out properly. It just left it feeling really, really dirty. So I went again with a brighter tan just to try to make a more neutral color that when I lit it in toy photography, it would look a bit better. But none of this really worked out. It still kept having that dirty look to it. I gave up for a little while and then just started painting white on the eyes, and black for the pupils. What ended up working was spraying again with a white primer on top of everything very lightly, and that was what gave me the best texture. Then I moved on with repainting the eyes and painting things like helmets, hats, and goggles. I used this shiny red airbrush just with my brush, and it's an enamel paint. It smells really bad and it doesn't wash off with water. I really love the look of it. And I just used a little pen for the eyes of the babies. The Elder Koco is the one I was most excited about for this project. You may have seen in a much older video me doing these Porygon figures that are flocked with grass flocking that I normally use for things like Dungeons and Dragons. Here you can see the terrain that I've created being messed up by my cat, Perkins. Very rude of him. And you'll see it in a future video on this Mario Galaxy diorama that I'm making. So first of all, I just painted this green all over where there would be moss. And then I use a mixture of Elmer's glue and water, about 2/3 water, 1/3 glue. And then I put that all over the surface where I want the flocking to stay. And then I just lightly sprinkle it on. There's advanced ways to do this where you use some kind of static tool to make it all stand up straight, but I don't generally do that. I did some touch-ups here and there where the glue wasn't sticking and just added more grass as I went. One thing that I regret about this is I got the front right, but I didn't really pay attention to the back. I kind of just did my own thing. If I were to redo this, I would make the back accurate as well. I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. And for things like this, I just bought some little flowers from Michael's. You'll notice in this clip that this isn't the final paint job. We had to rush to try to finish a collab with somebody on Instagram, So we did this first. We got Bailey taking a picture. We got the Koco with Sonic for the collab. Ooh, that looks really good on the video camera. Haha. This was Bailey's picture for the collab. It was one for every Sonic game put on by Void Studios GT. Here's the one that I did. And then once I had them finished, Bailey took some incredible pictures outside and in her studio of these figures. She's such a good photographer. Say in the comments if you also think she's a good photographer. I want to show one more thing that Tabitha did, one of my customers, created a rough surface with some paint. Now I've done this before with the Halloween Pumpkin Hill diorama that you've seen on the channel, and I think that was a great idea to use for the Koco. So here is everything done. I'm really happy with how this turned out. The grass just looks fantastic on the model, and the details from ZBrush are just the right depth to make the figures look rough, but not too rough. Really fun to have these guys displayed in my collection. Alright, it's time to thank the Patreon supporters. At our Tails level, we have YBZ and Kurasuchi. And at our Shadow level, we have Cyberamic Puppy and Choppus. Thank you guys so much for your support. It's super, super appreciated. Thanks for watching.